Hallmarkies, it's Casey here, and I am so excited to share my interview with Laura Allnutt, who is a friend of mine. She has released her first novel, Below Them the Horizon. This coming-of-age novel illuminates the hazards of family, the price of loss, and the guiding light of enduring friendship. So before we get into the interview, I just want to share a quick word from our sponsor, Care Of. Care Of is a wellness brand that makes it easy to maintain your health goals with a customized vitamin plan that helps you feel your best today and supports you long-term. Care Of is focused on the quality, science, and research that goes into each of their products and recommendations. Plus, they use wholesome ingredients that you recognize like organic cocoa and pink Himalayan salt. Care Of's easy online quiz helps you find the vitamins and powders that will support your specific health goals, like improving your fitness routine or managing stress. The quiz took me just a few minutes, and Care Of gave me some great recommendations, including the Extra Batteries Quick Sticks, because as a mom of two little ones, I'm always in need of a quick energy boost in the afternoons. Care Of can make taking your vitamins and supporting your health goals attainable, and it's hassle-free as your vitamins and supplements are delivered to you. So what are you waiting for? As the seasons change, it's important to get ahead of taking care of your immune health. It takes about 30 days for your body to adapt to new nutrients, so now is a great time to update your vitamin and wellness routines to help support your immune system this fall. So fall back into a healthy routine. I am so excited to share that Care Of is extending to you a 50% off discount. So for 50% off your first Care Of order, go to takecareof.com and enter code Hallmarkies50. Again, for 50% off your first Care Of order, go to takecareof.com and enter code Hallmarkies50. All right, Hallmarkies, let's dive into my interview with Laura Allnutt, author of Below Them the Horizon. Welcome back to the Hallmarkies podcast. I'm your host, Casey, and today I have a very special guest for this bonus episode of the Hallmarkies podcast, my friend Laura Allnutt. Laura, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on here, Casey.
Yeah. So you have just recently released your very first novel, correct?
Yes.
Below Them the Horizon.
Yes.
That is super exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. It is very exciting. Very surreal.
Yeah. So let's just get to know you a little bit better. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in writing?
I've actually been writing since I was a kid. I know that's a lot of writers' answers.
Yeah, we've talked to quite a few and they're like, I've always dreamed about being a writer, secret writer, closeted writer.
I was never closeted. My parents knew. I wanted to write and illustrate. And of course, when I was a kid, I wanted to do children's books because that's what I was reading. And my dad got me this computer program that was really cool that you could like set up a picture. Mm-hmm. And it had all this digital art. You could like choose a background and you could put different like stickers.
Oh, okay.
So like you could illustrate your story and I would like write the story to go along with the picture. And that was so fun. I spent hours on that thing.
That's so cool. Yeah. I don't remember that program. But it sounds really fun.
Yeah, I don't know what it was called because I mean this was back in like the original PC, like huge computer, bubble screens, and yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've never been really into because a lot of writers like to write their ideas out in notebooks and they carry notebooks around and like they'll actually write whole chapters in a notebook, and I've never really been that kind of writer, and I think it's because my parents, even back in the 90s, got me into like digital writing pretty early on.
That's interesting. Yeah. Because I know when I was little, I was always like secretly hiding my notebooks and my journals and my purses and like write out these tiny little stories and then shove it under my bed. Like, but that's so cool. Is it just something that you had always enjoyed, or Were you naturally a reader and then that's how you got into writing, or was it just, you ran off with your imagination as a kid?
I think it was all of the above. I mean, I had so much energy as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't really athletic, and I think I just channeled that energy into my imagination.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't sleep. I hardly slept as a kid. It was one of my mother's biggest griefs. So I would just lie awake for hours at night and just bored because bedtime was 8:30 or 9, and I wouldn't fall asleep until hours later. And then I always woke up around 5 or 6 in the morning. And my mom often put books on my nightstand
Mm-hmm.
so that when I woke up, I could just read. And she never, a lot of parents do, my sisters do this now. If their kids aren't tired, they'll let them read themselves to sleep. My mom didn't do that. I'm not really sure why. So I would just lie in bed and I would imagine stories. Like I would actually use my fingers as like characters and like have them talk to each other.
Oh, that's so cute.
I think it was just a way to escape boredom. Like just go into this storytelling realm.
Yeah. And how was that as you grew older? As you, developed your, your craft in writing and going forward?
I think as I grew older, like especially once I became a teenager, writing to me became a way to explore emotions in a way that I didn't feel like I could outwardly exhibit. Not because anyone was like stifling me or anything, but just because teenagers have such a difficult time processing emotions anyway. It just became an outlet for me to escape what I was feeling and also kind of work through what I was feeling, like depending on what mood I was in that day.
Yeah.
And then as I became an adult, I think that's what I really kind of ran with, was that exploration of ideas and, really mining yourself for what you know and what you don't know, and facing that tension between what you know and what you don't know, and kind of figuring it out on the page. And I think that's what makes really interesting characters and storylines, are those ones that, you're on a journey, you're trying to figure something out. Like there isn't an easy answer to this.
Right. Yeah. And then, so for our listeners here on the podcast, a little fun fact, Laura was my Latin teacher in college for a year. That's how we know each other. But my question is, I know you did a shift from teaching to creative writing. Was that always in the plans for you? Or was that just something that you had decided, you know what, writing is something that I'm super passionate about, and this is something I'm going to pursue?
My original plan when I was a senior in college, I was an English major, and the chair of the English department called me in and she said, "What are you going to do with your life?" And I said, "Well, I want to write. That's always been what I want to do." And she said, "Well, you're not going to make a living doing that. Why don't you teach, and then you can write in the summer?" And let me tell you, that's a trap. It's a major trap. Because one, you need to be writing throughout the year. You can't just save your writing time for like 2 months out of the year. It doesn't work that way. And the teaching life where I was teaching it was too much work to be able to have an effective writing time. So that I tried that for I think I was a teacher for 8 years.
Oh.
I don't remember how long was it? From when I was, no, it couldn't have been that long. Well, almost. I think it was 7 years, from when I was 22 to 29.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, I tried it. I mean, I actually got my MFA in writing at that time. And then I just realized this is not how that's going to work. I want to be able to write like all times of the year, not just in the summer. And in the summer, I was so exhausted, I usually took a month off from doing anything.
Yeah. I mean, teaching is like, I don't know, that teachers don't get paid enough. That's a lot of work because you're taking stuff home and all that. But yeah, I can totally understand the sentiment, because, I've always been one to want to write and want to be a writer, but even having a full-time job, and I am not a teacher, like It's draining. It's exhausting, you know. It's just you put a lot of effort and a lot of work into that. And then by the time, like for me, when I'm done at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write something, but I have nothing. Like all the thoughts are swirling up here and they
Yeah.
can't come out on paper. You know, it's a real struggle. But I mean, good on you for at least, you know, trying it and then going and pursuing that. Because I know there's a lot of people that I've talked to that is like a fear of just stepping out because of the, I don't know, I think it's the mentality of starving artist for any creative path.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
I will say to anybody who feels overwhelmed with life and not finding time to write, the best time that I have found to write, and it's so hard to discipline yourself to do it because if you're not a morning person, it's hard, and I'm not a morning person. Waking up early. Waking up early is it's just the way. This is the way. um, because I like the morning because it's that space that I have that I feel like is mine before the
Mhm.
day begins. Because if I wait till the evening, even though I do write in the evening sometimes, I'm just so tired. Like I have all the weight of the day
Mhm.
that I'm carrying with me into the evening, and so it's just a lot harder.
Yeah. Huh. That's yeah, you're right. Because you know, mornings for me, and I'm not a morning person all that much either, but I do feel much more like I feel fresh and I
Yeah,
feel like I have a clean slate, a clean brain I can, you know, function.
yes, like nothing has happened yet that's going to make me like that's going to cloud my thinking.
Right, right. Yeah, writing, I feel like writers, I feel like we all have this same commonality of trying to like finding our time to write and beginning that journey of writing. What was the journey like for you writing your first book? Beyond Them, the Horizon that just recently released. I know you've been working on it for a really long time. At least it seems like that to me.
Yes, it was a really long time. Yes. Below Them, the Horizon started in my MFA program in 2014. No, 2012. Um,
Oh, wow.
yeah, so it was a very long time. And
Yeah.
um, so it just started with one idea. I knew that it was going to be a friendship story.
Hmm.
And I knew that the main character lived on the Gulf Shore because the vision I had of her, I always saw two girls on the beach, but not in the happy beach kind of scene that we always imagine. Like, you know, watching the sunset, it's
Hmm.
all peaceful. And because we associate the beach with so much calm and happiness.
Hmm.
But for her, it was going to be the opposite. Like, it was going to be a storm on the horizon.
Hmm.
And so that was what I knew when I started. And the book took so many different shapes as I was writing it. It was in first person, and then it was in third person, and then it went back to first person, and then finally landed on third person. Um, and I did have it for a little while anachronistic, so that you saw scenes from the past, and then they would kind of correlate with a scene in the present. Very like
Mm.
us kind of style.
Hmm.
Um, and that just got to be too confusing. I think it was too hard for a reader to be able to keep up with like the actual
Hmm.
story that was going on, and it just needlessly slows. Like, why put your reader through that much work?
Right.
I know people do have use that technique for certain effects, but I didn't need it for this book.
Hmm.
So once I got what point of view it was going to be in, and the chronology, like all of that helped it really fall into place in the more recent years that I was writing it.
Hmm.
Um, and also in the beginning, Lucy did not have mental illness. She had multiple sclerosis, which was interesting. I really enjoyed the research that I did for that. I
Hmm.
actually joined an MS support group for a while.
Hmm.
And they knew that I didn't have MS. I
Right, right.
to observe it. And those people were so eager to tell me their stories, and they were so happy to have, somebody giving them a voice. And I felt bad that I ended up letting that go, but I knew that I was using it as a crutch because I didn't want to write about mental illness.
Hmm.
And once I let myself, you know, acknowledge that's the real story. Like her battle isn't so much a physical ailment, it's a mental ailment.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when the story really started taking shape, and I was really able to start putting the crux of the story together. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was an 8-year process from start to finish.
Wow. Wow, that's a
Crazy.
long time. Yeah, I'm really glad you switched the issue to mental illness, just because I feel like a storm and the ocean, that really just captures mental illness.
Yeah.
Because it's like, like you said, everybody sees the beach as like a happy, calming place, but no, sometimes you don't see the turmoil that's, there. And it's a lot, that's how mental illness is. You see somebody and they look perfectly fine on the outside, but you don't know what's going on in their head. There's a lot of thoughts and some issues, and just, you know anxiety is a big thing that a lot of people struggle with, and that's what your character Lucy struggled with as well. And I feel like that just I like the setting of the book. I like that it was the ocean, and I like that you changed it to mental illness for that reason.
Yeah, I really liked what worked really well is what you said, that idea of something may look fine on the surface, but of course, as you know, living there on the Gulf, riptides are such a big issue, like more
Mm-hmm.
so than, I mean, they exist on the Atlantic, but not nearly as badly as they do in the Gulf.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that was very indicative of what mental illness is like, where somebody looks fine, like you go to the grocery store and you have no idea who's dealing with what. But there's always that storm, like that danger beneath the surface that you don't see. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really liked how that imagery worked out. And I also really liked um, the ability to use water and the idea of drowning to
Mm-hmm.
symbolize anxiety. One of my readers, one of my friends who read the book after it was published, has never battled mental illness, which is wonderful for her. But she says she didn't really know what it felt like to have
Mm-hmm.
that kind of like panic attack and anxiety. And she said the description of somebody drowning, always feeling like you're drowning, helped make her aware of what mental illness is like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, for one, that was so touching to me to know that I was able to help like somebody understand what it feels like for all the people who do suffer from it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it just kind of validated that decision to set it on the Gulf. Like the setting wasn't just there, as a prop for the character, but it actually worked with the character and kind of even served as a character
Mm-hmm.
in the story.
It really did, and it worked really, really well. And I also appreciated the drowning idea of it being a picture of the mental illness and the anxiety, because I mean, when I was reading, and spoiler alert, pause right here, if you haven't gotten this book, you can go buy it on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and wherever books are sold.
Yes.
But there's a moment where Lucy has a panic attack, and I think she's in high school, and like I could feel myself like like getting all like worked up for her. And like there's moments that she goes to the ocean, and again, like I'm feeling that, like I'm empathizing with her character. And then also, living on the Gulf and knowing how the Gulf can be, it's very unpredictable at times too. It was so well written. I feel like your book, can people who suffer from mental illness, I feel like they would appreciate it, just because it's like it empathizes with them. It knows what that person's going through. And then on the opposite end, if you don't, or if you know somebody who has a mental illness, you can better understand. And that's one takeaway that I had from it, is just getting in the mind of somebody who suffers from that mental illness.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
I also appreciated that, that's something that people never really used to talk about. And I don't know, I've not read very many books. Not that I've read a lot of books in the last couple of years because I've been a little busy, but of a lot of books that tackle that topic.
I think they're becoming more popular. I just read this year, Eleanor Oliphant is Fine. Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. Is the title. And that one, it's a more humorous take on mental illness, even though she doesn't make light of it. You see how serious it is by the end, but the book is a very fun kind of book. And I think that more people are becoming more willing to talk about it and write about it. And I think one of the reasons people haven't is that there's been such a stigma about it. And there's so much shame when you actually struggle with mental illness, as I have, and I know many other people have. You kind of don't want to tell somebody because it's so hard to explain. Like when you say I'm having anxiety, and there's people who don't experience that, or even who have, and they've just learned to live with it. They have that sort of, okay, well, it's fine. Everything's fine. There's nothing to be afraid of. Like, it's just something you're afraid of.
Right.
And so you start just feeling like, well, okay, I can't really explain this, and I just kind of feel stupid, so I'm not going to talk about it. I just won't go. I just won't go to that party because, I know I'm going to feel bad and I won't be able to explain why, so I'll just stay home.
Right.
So I think more people are figuring out ways to talk about it, and that's one of the reasons I enjoyed writing the book, because it helped give me language to talk about it. And more and more people are doing that and in different ways, which is really great, because I like more serious take. I think it's good to have a lighthearted take. And I think we're going to see more books covering it in the future.
Yeah. So we kind of talked a little bit about it, but why mental illness? Was it because you had mentioned you'd experienced it? Was that a deciding factor for you in changing the storyline from multiple sclerosis to mental health?
It was. I felt like it was more authentic for me to write her having mental illness than it was MS. I knew that MS was me hiding the thing that I really wanted to talk about. And I really felt very alone when I first started battling mental illness. And I didn't really know who to talk to, what to do about it. And I thought we need more people writing about this. Like we need people to show us that, like, teenagers struggle with mental illness a lot, especially today more than ever, because the world is so big, and it gets bigger for them faster than it got even for us in the 90s and the early 2000s. It can be scary, and all of those things, you're not emotionally ready to process them, and that can lead to a lot of depression and anxiety. And if you take care of it early on, it can become much worse. It can become chronic instead of acute. And so I felt really burdened to be honest about it and put aside my own shame and fear about talking about it, in order to write a really authentic character and tackle a topic that I think should be talked about more, especially among even a Christian audience, and a young adult audience, because I think that those are the two groups that don't talk about it enough.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Was it when you were writing the mental health portion of your book, when you're changing it, at that time, were you, was it kind of like therapy in a sense for you to write it? Because I know they say, either you write what you know, or you write what you need to let out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Was that just, did it work out for you that way, or?
It kind of. I actually, a lot of people say write what you know, but a lot of people also say write what you don't know, because that makes the writing more exciting.
Yeah.
And fresh. And for me, it was a little bit of both. I knew it, but I had to learn how to talk about it. And I also had to put it in scenes that made people feel that anxiety with Lucy, which was really hard to do, because sometimes you want to just use language like, she felt like she was going to die. She felt like she couldn't breathe. And that's important, because you have to let people know how she felt. But also that idea of the room spinning, and like something was sucking the air out of the room. And why was her heart racing, and having like Lucy kind of like think through, because when you get caught in that mental trap, all you're thinking about is how bad you're feeling, and you start questioning, like, why is this happening? How can I make it stop? How can I make it go away? Let me get out of here. Like, if people would just go away, and all of those things. And so learning how to like show that was fun because it was a challenge, but also writing it was kind of triggering sometimes. I would start like writing the scene and I'd be like, oh, I'm kind of feeling the anxiety myself now. So it was a little both.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it really works, because when I was reading some of those scenes, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to take a second here. Yeah. So going back to writing, so one thing I remember is from when I was a student in college, and I believe you were probably getting your master's or whatever, you used to write very comedically and very warm, fuzzy, heartfelt stories. The one that comes to mind is the one that was shared in I think it was the English writing forum, where 5 of the professors shared their story, and you shared one about your passport experience, which was hilarious. Was it hard for you to switch your tone from that to something more serious? Just because I remember reading your draft several years ago, and I was like, oh, this is different. And it wasn't a bad different. It was just not what I was used to.
Right. I think your experience is what a lot of people have, or people who knew me have experienced, because I don't think like my mom and my aunt, I don't think that they were expecting it to be as heavy as it was.
Right.
I'd always written kind of more comedic or just soft literature. But I think I've always been expected. I have always felt, nobody ever told me this, but I always felt like I had to bring people joy. Like I had to make people laugh.
Gotcha.
And so that's why I wrote that way when you were my student. But a lot of the private writing in my life at that time was more serious. I just felt embarrassed to share it.
Oh, okay.
And it was my MFA program when I went to Fairfield University that they really helped draw that out. Like and also reading more literary fiction like Marilyn Robinson and Toni Morrison and all of the great writers of that, caliber. They helped kind of draw that out of me. And finding the balance of who I am and the different styles that I can write in has been a really exciting experience. Like I don't really want to be boxed into one style. I don't want to just be a humor writer. I don't want to just be a literary fiction writer, who has tackled really heavy topics. I want to be able to kind of just move
right
the different styles of writing. And I think that is a way to keep my writing fresh, and a challenge to me, because I like a challenge. So it wasn't really, I can see why it was a shock to you, but it wasn't a shock to me.
Yeah. And I will say too, I think the draft that I read was very serious. This, the published version, I feel like it has a good balance of, it's not terribly happy, like, to be honest. It's not supposed to be. It's very realistic. So I wasn't feeling like, oh, I'm so sad reading about Lucy and her story. I felt very, it just felt like a realistic take. Like I felt like I was watching 2 people, because it's mostly about Lucy and her friend Audra, just like go through life, because they start when the book starts when she's very young. I think she's like 7 or so, something like that, and it goes to adulthood. So it was kind of like just watching these 2 girls grow up and see where life took them. I feel like you found a really good balance there of not being so heavy, but also not being so unrealistic for this topic too.
Right. Thanks. It was very hard to try to get to that point. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes people take a topic that can be heavy and they make it way too heavy, and you're just like, oh, okay, Good. Or they take something like that and then it's like too happy, like everything's wrapped up in a really pretty bow. And that's another thing I appreciated about this book is at the end, it's not necessarily wrapped up in a bow, but you see that there's like a relief there
Yes.
for Lucy.
Mhm.
And you know that she's always going to have this struggle, but she also has that hope at the end,
Mhm.
where she was really struggling with that throughout the book for various reasons that we won't give away at this time. But I really like that. I really like the realisticness of the book. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So we have several aspiring writers in our group and among our listeners as well. What is one piece of advice you would give someone who's beginning the journey, aside from write in the morning?
Well, I strongly advise getting into a writing group.
Mhm,
Um, I loved my MFA program just because I had people reading my work and giving me feedback on it. And that doesn't always mean the feedback you get is great. Um,
mhm,
like some workshops that I sat in were much more helpful than others, and some mentors for those workshops, had more insight than others, or just different insight.
mhm,
Some of it was more immediately applicable, and some of it was kind of long term applicable. But having that kind of feedback is it's so good. And it's so helpful to have somebody say, I really enjoyed reading this. Like I was hooked from the first word. And it's really helpful to have the opposite when somebody says, I just couldn't get into it,
mhm,
because that lets you gauge like what's happening in your writing.
mhm,
So I strongly suggest getting into a group, and your group may be somebody on par with your writing, but try to get people who are both the audience that you're writing to and people who help you write up, like who are gonna, pull you up instead
right.
of just letting you stay on your plateau.
Mhm, right, right, right. Yeah, I mean, it's super important just because, you don't know what you don't know,
Right.
and there there's always that other perspective
Mhm.
that people provide, even if it's something that's like, ooh, this is not good.
I also I strongly suggest having um a constant mentality of learning, like always
Mhm,
learning, and like read craft books, listen to craft lectures, go to craft talks or readings. Anne Lamott actually
mhm,
came to Cincinnati last year or 2 years ago. Wow, time flies. Um, and it was just enjoyable to sit and listen to her talk about writing and talk about her writing life. You get little bursts of inspiration and you just learn from it.
mhm.
And along with that, of course, read. A lot of people want to be writers, but they don't like reading, and that doesn't really work.
Right. Right. It's very true. It's very, very true. I mean, I think when I was younger, because I was reading so much, I
Mhm.
was writing a ton more. And then now as an adult, and I'm like, okay, I want to write a book. And I'm like, I've read like 3 books this year. That's not good. you know?
And also, I mean, when you read, a lot of the times good ideas come because you've read a book and you love something so much that you wanted more of it. And that's not
Mhm,
necessarily fan fiction, but it's taking that thing that you love and expounding a new version of that idea,
mhm,
because it really resonated with you. And the author, they put that in the story because, they thought it was important, or maybe they just got lucky and put that in and you were lucky enough to read it. But I think that a lot of the good writing that comes into the world is the result of reading other people's what they have written and being inspired and saying, "Hey, I like that idea. I think I could do that better in this way."
mhm.
Right? I think I could take that little nugget that they put in there, and I can, you know, I don't know if you plant nuggets, the seed, put it in the ground, and
Right.
I can grow a big garden out of that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun, as they say, and it's just a different perspective.
Right.
So that's good. I know the other thing everybody always tells us is just do it.
Yes, I'll say that.
Just write something. Which is my struggle. Maybe I'm just the notebook person. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. It is also NaNoWriMo. I don't even know how to pronounce it. National Novel Writing Month of November. So
I've seen some people, I've never done that. I've always, every year I think I'm going to do it next year. And then it always creeps up on me and I'm like, oh my goodness, I've got too much on my plate to do that. But a lot of people, like, they'll set really high goals. Like, I'm going to write 5,000 words a day. And I'm like, who are you?
Right. Yeah, I think it's 50,000 for this challenge.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. And my friend was like, you should do it. And I'm like, for what time? I think I'll do like maybe 10,000, 2,500 words a week for 4 weeks. I think that's better than 50,000. That's a lot of words, you know?
Yeah.
So super fun. So do you have any other novels in the work, or is there anything else you can tease that's coming up for you?
Well, I do have 3 novels in the work.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, and it's nice though, because whenever I kind of get bored with one, I just kind of switch over to the other. Or if I just need a break from one or whatever.
Yeah.
One is the one that I've been working on the least. It's still very much in the idea phase. Is along the same tone, different topic entirely, but same tone as Below Them the Horizon. But the other is a children's book.
Oh.
Around middle grade fiction. That one is the one that I'm having a blast. I really love that story. I already love the characters so much.
Oh.
And the third one is young adult fantasy, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm it's going to be set in the real world, kind of like a Harry Potter idea, where it's placed in the real world, but there's this other world that you just don't see.
Right. Yeah.
That's all I can say about that for now.
Oh, that's fun. And that's also really different than Below Them the Horizon and like other things I've read of yours, like the comedic part. But fantasy, that's really exciting.
Yeah, it's really fun to write and it's very challenging, which I love a challenge. So
yeah. Do you see any of those books becoming series?
I do see the fantasy book being a series, probably a trilogy.
Okay.
But what I really want to do with that one that I've never done before is have short stories that kind of connect to the main trilogy and publish the short stories in different fantasy magazines or fiction magazines.
Oh.
Just to kind of like build a fan base for the story and just see how that goes. So
yeah, that's super exciting. We'll have to stay tuned for more. Do you know when they'll be released or?
Oh, well, the first book, I have 28,000 words on the first book, and it'll probably be about 100,000 words. And of course, I'm sure many words will be deleted and along the way.
Right. Right. All right. And also I know you'd mentioned that Below Them the Horizon was supposed to be about multiple sclerosis. Are you going to tackle that topic? Because I mean, you have so much knowledge of it now. Is that something you'll go back to?
I hope to in the future. Right now, I don't have a story set. I don't have any kind of anything for that in my head just now. I do think it's an important topic that isn't written about enough, because so many women do have MS, and a lot of women often get it after a pregnancy. Like something about pregnancy kind of just sparks that in them, or draws it out or something. So I do think that it's an important topic to get to. I just don't have one. I don't want to force it before it's ready.
Right. Yes. I completely understand that. But it's still brewing. It's still in the back of your head.
Yes.
Actually, I think one of our hosts, she has multiple sclerosis too. So I know that's something that's really important for her. And like just awareness of a lot of these different things. So yeah, well, we look forward to seeing what comes down the pipeline for you and your writing career. it's super exciting. And I don't know. I told Dan, I was like, look at this book that I just got. Remember Miss Allnutt from college? She wrote a book. It's so pretty. And the cover is like super gorgeous. Like my computer doesn't show it justice, but it's really pretty. I love the cover.
Thank you. I also love it.
It's like my favorite color, teal.
Yeah.
And very, very like accurate to the golf too. I was like, now this is pretty awesome, but yay. Alrighty, so we have a little fun segment. We usually do some like teen beat type thing, but this is the author version because you're an author. So fun, quick questions. What are you reading now?
Wow, I'm reading 3 different books. 2 of my colleagues who also graduated from Fairfield University also had their debut novels published this fall.
Oh, wow.
So, Brooke Adams Law just published her book Catchlight.
Okay.
Stephanie Harper just published Wesley Yorstead Goes Outside. And that book, Wesley Yorstead Goes Outside, also deals with mental illness. He's agoraphobic. So I've only read the first few pages of that so far. And also, he's already a very interesting character.
Agoraphobic meaning fear of people?
The fear of leaving your house because you might have an anxiety attack.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So have you ever seen the movie Nim's Island?
No.
I think it's
Abigail Breslin?
Yeah. So Jodie Foster plays a writer who's agoraphobic. She doesn't leave her house for anything. Like she opens her door, like people deliver her food or her mail, and she like sticks a hand out and like quickly pulls it in, and then she comes in and she's like bathing in hand sanitizer.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, it reminds me of another movie that I saw. This one's more of an indie film. It's At Home by Myself with You. And this girl, so she was pretty fearless when she was younger. And her mom told her like, don't go outside because somebody's gonna die. And like every time she goes outside when she's younger, something tragic happens. Like her dad died because she was on the boat with him and like a lobster bit her finger and then he was trying to get her off and then he flew out overboard. It's kind of bonkers, but it's also kind of fun. And then like in high school, she has her first kiss with her boyfriend, but she had a peanut butter sandwich and he goes into anaphylactic shock, so he dies. And then there was a thunderstorm or something, and then like she threw her dog out the window by accident or like jumped off the balcony. I don't really remember, but like all these little things contribute to her just staying in her apartment.
Yeah.
She like has to have people open the boxes for her, and like people are bringing her stuff, and it's just like it's her journey of like I don't know, like dealing with that. It's a kind of a fun bonkers kind of movie, but you also if you have anxiety, you also kind of relate to it too, because it is a little far-fetched, but at the same time you're like, I kind of totally get you.
Yes, yeah, because when you see it on the screen, it's like that would never happen. It's so ridiculous. But in your head, that kind of stuff can happen.
Right. Right. Or the feeling of like how the character was feeling. I was like, oh yes, completely like bonkers, but I get you.
Yes.
But yeah, so those 2 books. And then were you reading a third one, did you say?
Oh yeah, I'm also reading the second Jungle Book. So I didn't realize until this year, and I'm 34, that Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book was actually 2 books. It's the Jungle Book and the second Jungle Book. Oh. But usually they're published as one. And so I'm on the second. And actually the first, which I just finished, I think last month, it's so good. I highly recommend reading the Jungle Book. It's very different from the Disney versions. Actually, the live action one is the new live action Jungle Book that Disney just made a couple years ago. That one is actually one of the short stories in the Jungle Book.
Oh.
So it's more of a collection of short stories, and they don't all have to do with Mowgli.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky Tikki Tavi is a short story in
Mm-hmm.
the first one. It's just really enjoyable. I love his storytelling style. He just
Yeah.
really gets you in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been a long time since I've read Ricky Tikki Tavi.
And he's so precious. Like I've never wanted a mongoose more than when I read. I mean, I didn't even want a mongoose until I read it.
That's fun. Yeah, I'll have to go. I don't know. I'll have to go get the books or whatever and read them to the girls at night. Um, just because I'm like rediscovering all these things that I remember as a child. Like I remember the first Jungle Book, or there being one outside of the movie. Like I don't even know if I've seen the whole movie of the Disney Jungle Book, but I mean, I definitely remember Ricky Tikki Tavi. And I remember that being a book, but it's been so long since I was a child. So yeah, and I'll have to go check out the other two authors too, and check out their stuff because that sounds fun. I'm trying to my goal for 2021 and forward is to read more fiction and
Mm,
not just like basic fiction, because in high school and in college I was very like stuck in the Christian fiction like typical world,
yeah.
just because it was fluffy and I was very idealistic, and then I got burned out because I got bored. So I've avoided a lot of fiction just because I'm like, a lot of my friends don't read a lot and I'm like, I don't know what's out here and what's good. So trying to branch out and read different genres and all that. So to do that. All right. The next fun question is fiction or nonfiction?
Well, both, but
You said fiction?
yeah, mostly fiction. I mean, I
Mostly
like
fiction.
a nonfiction book. Like I like reading craft books. I like memoirs. I read Julie Andrews, her second memoir. I read her first one back when I think it came out in 2014,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And then her second one came out, I think, late last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that.
I really enjoy
Mm-hmm.
a good memoir. Um, I like essays, collections of essays, but mostly I just love fiction. I'm totally here for fiction.
Yeah. Library or bookstore?
Bookstore,
E-reader or physical book?
definitely physical book.
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
but I will say this: the Kindle and ebook version of Below the Horizon just came out on Sunday.
Oh.
So if you know anybody who only reads digital versions, you can let them know it is now available on digital.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm all for a physical book. My attention is kept longer in a physical book. I don't know if it's because I'm smelling the paper subconsciously and I'm holding
Yeah.
something, but there's just something about it.
Yeah, an actual book, like the smell and the feel, and like no, like being able to feel the page, like you have this much when you start, and then you're like, no, it's all on this side. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I will say too, though, I will admit if there's a book that I've been waiting for and I just can't wait for it, I will buy it and read it on my app, like my Kindle app, just because I'm too impatient. So it's like the convenience factor, but in all actuality, I love the physical book.
right.
So I think we all kind of answered this already, but computer or pen and paper?
Computer.
Yeah. Okay, the next one, there's only one right answer, maybe. Oxford comma or no Oxford comma?
Word comma. What's wrong with the world? Just use the comma.
What is your go-to writing snack?
Coffee.
Ah, yes, coffee. It's a good one. Got mine
Yeah.
right here. If you could pick, what is your favorite book or series?
Oh wow. Oh man, I don't think I could pick. I have so this one is so basic, but I love Little Women. I love that story so much. I think that's probably one of my favorite stories, and I think just it just resonates with me because I have two sisters,
Mhm.
um, and we still are very close to our parents. I don't know. We watched the movie with my mom when we were growing up. I don't know. I just love it. It's a feel-good book.
Yeah.
I've also really gotten into I don't know, so many other authors. I really love reading Marilyn Robinson. Her writing can be really heavy sometimes, not emotionally, but just like she's very intelligent, very intellectual. And so like you read slower when you read hers, but I think she's brilliant. I read The Graveyard Book for the first time this year by Neil Gaiman. It's one of those books that's technically written to a young audience, but even adults love that book. And it's parallel to The Jungle Book. So instead of a baby being raised into manhood by the jungle animals, there's a baby raised into adulthood by the graveyard ghosts. So it's really neat. It's really, it's a beautiful book. I loved it.
Huh, interesting. I'll have to look that one up too. It sounds intriguing.
Yeah, it's very intriguing.
Yeah, and almost perfect for like the October and Halloween and November time, you know. And yes, Little Women, that is definitely a classic. And final question, since this is the Hallmarkies podcast, what is your favorite Hallmark movie?
You know, I loved the Hallmark, what were they called? I don't think they make them anymore. The Hallmark
Hall of Fames?
Yes, those.
Yes.
I love Sarah Plain and Tall. That's one of my all-time favorite Hallmark movies.
Yes.
And it was based on a book, which I also read.
So I think that was my very first Hallmark movie I saw, but I was a kid and I didn't like it. And I think it's because I liked the book. But then
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I went back and I watched part of it because I think I caught it on TV and there was nothing else on. I was like, I need to watch this as an adult from an adult perspective. And I was like, oh, this is so good.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. When I was a kid, I think that was also my first Hallmark movie, to be honest. Now that you say that. I thought Christopher Walken was so scary. And I was like, I wish you could just like have a family with the kids and not have to marry him.
Oh, that's funny.
I know, but I think it's such a beautiful story. It's just a good one.
Yeah, yeah. And there's 3. It's a part of the trilogy.
Yeah, I know. The first 2 are both good. I didn't really care for the third one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've seen bits and pieces of all of them just because I don't know, I've just not had time to sit down and find it. I just don't think of that. But yeah, I'll have to put it on my list of things to actually watch all the way through because it is a beautiful story. It's very, I don't know, like you got the prairie and you have the widower and you have like the romance and you have like the children who are obnoxious at first. And, you know, it's like a perfect recipe. It's a perfect Hallmark movie.
Yes. And I've always loved I think his name's Caleb, the little boy. I've always loved how he wanted a harmonica because it would be a little music in his pocket. I've loved mine ever since I heard it.
Super fun. Well, Laura, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It was a lot of fun to get to know you and your writing now, and looking forward to seeing what else you have in store. Do you have any social media that you want to shout out where people can follow you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and it's just my full name, Laura Allnutt.
Awesome.
ALL, 2 L's, NUTT, if you want to find me that way. And yeah, I'd love to see you there.
Yeah. And then don't forget, Hallmarkies, go get Laura's book, Below Them the Horizon, and it is available on digital. So go get that too. We will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.